guys, Anth predicts here. So today I'm doing a updated 2020 Senate prediction video. I did some past videos kind of explaining where Republicans and Democrats could gain seats, but now I'm going to do my actual prediction for the month of December and how I think the Senate's looking right now. So I'm going to start in the West and work my way east. I think Oregon, is going to go in the Democrat column for now. I don't really see it getting too contested, especially in a presidential year. I think Idaho and Wyoming are going to go Republican. Montana we're going to come back to. South Dakota and Nebraska will both go for the Republicans. I think Kansas we're going to come back to. Oklahoma will go Republican. I think New Mexico right now, if Susana Martinez, the former Republican governor, runs, that could get more competitive. But as of now, she hasn't indicated whether or not she will run. If she does, that race could get more competitive. But right now, she is not. So New Mexico will go to the Democrats. Alaska, Dan Sullivan, he'll win there, pretty much no problem. He won big back in 2014. No reason to suspect he won't win big again. Texas will come back to. Louisiana, Bill Cassidy, he'll win this race. I know people will think that, well, John Paul Edwards just won the governorship, but he's a popular incumbent Democrat governor, and Bill Cassidy's a popular incumbent senator, so it's really not going to get too contested. Tom Cotton, he'll win in Arkansas. He'll win by a pretty big margin. Cindy Hyde-Smith in Mississippi, she'll win there. I'm actually confident to say this. Alabama, I think, will be in around a safe to likely margin. I think Doug Jones is pretty much just riding out the rest of his term, then he's done. If it's Jeff Sessions or Tommy Tuberville, that race will be a pretty big blowout win for the Republicans. If it is Roy Moore, which I don't believe it's going to be, I think he has virtually no chance of winning now that Jeff Sessions is in the race. But if it ends up being Roy Moore, then this race is a lot more competitive and everything changes. But for now, I think it's a safe Republican seat with Jeff Sessions or Tommy Tuberville. Tennessee, we're still waiting on who's going to be the GOP nominee for that race. The former governor, Bill Haslam, is someone who they're looking to possibly run the Republicans. And if that's the case, he'll win the seat. I think pretty much every Republican is going to win in Tennessee, though. I mean, Phil Bredesen in 2018 kind of proved that Democrats don't really have much of a chance of winning there. Lindsey Graham in South Carolina, he's going to win there. I don't really see South Carolina getting too competitive. West Virginia, I think West Virginia is going to go in a pretty big margin. Shelley Moore Capital will win there. North Carolina and Virginia and Georgia will come back to. Mitch McConnell and Kentucky will come back to as well. Dick Durbin in Illinois, he's going to win there by a pretty big margin. There really aren't any Illinois Republicans who can really make that race like too competitive. Out west, I think that's all the states I want to talk about. On the East Coast now, Delaware, I think that's going to go. I think it's Chris Coons who's running. He's going to win there. Cory Booker, New Jersey, he's going to win there. I think it's Jack Reed in Rhode Island. Yeah, Jack Reed in Rhode Island, he'll win. Massachusetts, my home state. It's going to be interesting to see who wins the primary between Ed Markey and Joseph Kennedy, Joseph Kennedy III. It'll be interesting to see who wins that race. My money right now is on Joseph Kennedy. I think despite the fact that Ed Markey has every single endorsement, or pretty much every single one, Joseph Kennedy is leading in all the primary polls. Plus, he's younger and has all the enthusiasm going his way. So, Massachusetts will be a Democratic Senate seat no matter what, but I think Kennedy's going to win the primary. And New Hampshire and Maine, I'm going to come back to. Alright, so those are all the safe seats I see right now. Republicans will have 43, Democrats will have 42. So all the seats I'm highlighting in this golden yellow color are all states that either could be competitive or states that I want to go in depth and talk about a little more than usual. So I'm going to start in Montana. I think Montana is a Republican seat for now, but it all depends on whether Steve Bullock, who just recently dropped out of the presidential race, if he runs for Senate, this race becomes either a lean Republican or toss-up instantly. But he's indicated he does not want to run. He's told several of his aides and supporters he has no plans on running. So if he stays true on his word and doesn't run, I think this seat's staying in the Republican column. If he changes his mind and decides to run, then this seat definitely becomes more competitive. Okay, now we're going to go on to the state of Kansas. Kansas, it's interesting because this should be a Republican seat, and I think it will be. If Chris Kobach's the nominee, this seat gets a lot harder for Republicans to win, and I really feel like he's going to be the nominee again. And it'll be interesting to see what happens. I just don't think there's a Democrat that's going to take a big enough amount of vote away from Chris Kobach on a national stage to win. The reason he lost last time is because there's a Democrat candidate and Greg Orman, the Libertarian or the Independent, excuse me. He took up a big percentage of votes. So if he's not running and there's only a Republican and Democrat, because Chris Kobach should win this race pretty easily, but still, he's not the best candidate Republicans should run in Kansas. Texas, John Cornyn, I'd put that in the Republican column for now. If Beto runs, I don't think Beto O'Rourke's going to run. I think he's pretty much done in politics, but if Beto does decide to run, or Julian Castro or Joaquin Castro, this race could get more competitive, but John Cornyn's a lot more popular and less divisive than Ted Cruz is. So I really think Republicans are probably going to do well in Texas either way. So I think John Cornyn will win, even regardless if Beto decides to run or not. The 2 seats in Georgia. So David Perdue's seat, I think, is going to be probably won by a bigger margin than the special election seat. And Governor Brian Kemp just appointed Kelly Loeffler to run for the special seat. But it's interesting because she's more of a Mitt Romney style Republican and was a staffer for Romney in his campaign. But the Republican challenger who President Trump wanted Brian Kemp to appoint, whose name was Doug Collins, I believe, he said he may run against Kelly Loeffler in a Republican primary for this seat, because it's kind of the two wings of the Republican Party. There's like the moderate Romney wing, and then there's the President Trump wing, who's kind of more conservative and supports the president on almost everything. So it'll be interesting to see if Doug Collins does run against her, because I have no idea who would win that primary. Georgia and Arizona, for instance, both tend to like the more moderate Republicans than the Trump Republicans. But it'll be interesting to see who turns out to vote in that primary, because the general election is a lot different than a Republican primary, where the primaries typically go farther to the right in elections. So Georgia, I'd put that David Perdue seat in the Republican column. I'd put the special seat right now in the Republican column as well, but expect the margin to be a lot smaller. The state of Virginia, I think Virginia is actually going to be closer this time around than people expect. I think the Republicans have lost a string of elections. I think going back to 2010 or 2011, they lost every statewide race in Virginia. So Republicans, I feel like, are going to pour a lot of under-the-table money into Virginia, trying to make it closer and more competitive. And I think Scott Taylor, who could be the nominee, he's probably very likely to be the nominee, he'll do better than people expect against Mark Warner. Mark Warner's kind of gone more, he's a lot more of a moderate Democrat. And a lot of D.C. suburban people who are starting to vote more liberal Democrats. You'll see the top 3 counties of Loudoun County, and I think Fairfax County, I think it was. They're kind of going to the left, more liberal, less moderate. So that could actually hurt Mark Warner, and Scott Taylor could potentially do better. But nevertheless, I think Mark Warner will still probably win about 5 to 7 point margin, I'd say. Kentucky, I think Mitch McConnell in a presidential election year, Mitch McConnell will win the state of Kentucky. I know, I can imagine the comments now, but Andy Beshear just won in Kentucky. How can you give it to Mitch McConnell? Well, number one, Matt Bevin was the most unpopular governor in the country. Plain and simple. Plus, governor's races and Senate races are very different. People are often willing to elect opposite party governors, but will never vote for an opposite party senator. Example, my home state of Massachusetts. We've had Charlie Baker for 2 terms now. He's a Republican governor. We'll always be willing to elect Republican governors. We will never, ever elect a Republican senator, though. The last Republican senator we had was Scott Brown, and that was because of a special election back in 2011, I believe. And Kentucky, I feel like it's the same way. They'll keep electing Republican and Democrat governors back and forth, but Republican senators will always be there. I think this will be Mitch McConnell's closest race he's ever been in, but I expect him to hold on probably within 5 points. Now on to the state of now we'll come back to that one. On to the state of Minnesota right now. Jason Lewis, I think if he gets more attention, he could become very dangerous in this candidate. He could definitely knock off Tina Smith and win that seat in Minnesota. But right now, he needs to get more fundraising underway. President Trump needs to come to Minnesota and make more appearances for that to happen. And until that happens, I see Minnesota going in the Democrat column for now. The state of Michigan. So this is one I'm actually kind of flipping on. I had John James winning initially, but then I looked into it now. There's a lot of polls already coming out that show a very tight contested race. And John James is doing very well in fundraising right now, but the polling's just not there yet. Plus, President Trump won last time with like 47% of the vote. And John James, to win this race, there's unlikely to be a really prominent third-party candidate, so he'll have to win a majority of the vote. And that's going to be very tough for him to do in Michigan, I think. So I think John James definitely could win, and I could change my mind on this one probably like 20 times before Election Day. But right now, I'd give it to Gary Peters in a very narrow, like under 2 points column right now. So on to the state of Colorado. Colorado is actually interesting because everyone kind of written off Cory Gardner, but when you write off candidates instantly, that's when they become the most dangerous in winning. And John Hickenlooper's been going through some scandals apparently in Colorado that not many people know about. So he may not even end up being the nominee. But even if he does, these scandals could end up hurting him in a general election. So right now, Cory Gardner does have a chance to win still. If he runs a very fine line of being pro-Trump in some areas, but pro-Democrats in other areas, also if he's in favor of legalizing marijuana in Colorado, that could definitely help him out. So Cory Gardner definitely could win in Colorado. He still has a chance. He's not gone yet, but for now, I'd put it in the narrow, under 3 to 4 points Democrat column. But look on Cory Gardner to make a late play. He could definitely win there. The state of Iowa, I'm going to give that one to Joni Ernst. I think Joni Ernst has a pretty good approval rating. I know it's fallen recently, but she still is in pretty good standing for re-election. There isn't really a prominent Democrat that's going to give her too much trouble. They'll probably be close within like 5 to 6 points, I'd say. But Joni Ernst expected to hold on. Most of the tariff and trade stuff that has affected Iowa has kind of moved on and isn't really downplaying too bad on President Trump or Joni Ernst that it was a few months ago. So she I think, will win in Iowa. The state of New Hampshire. New Hampshire's a state I think can get really close. I think Corey Lewandowski definitely could win against Gene Shaheen. But A, he's not running yet, and B, we haven't really seen any data proving that. So basically, I'd just be taking a shot in the dark if I said that. And I would rather wait to call this race for a Republican like Corey Lewandowski until we see actual numbers coming out saying he's winning. Also, until we actually see if Corey Lewandowski announces he's going to run, which he hasn't done yet. He said by the end of the year he's thinking about it. So Corey Lewandowski, I think, definitely could win in New Hampshire. But for now, I'm going to keep it in the Democrat column. Under 3 points, I think it'll be decided. I think Corey Lewandowski could definitely win this race, but we're just not seeing it yet. Now, out of the state of Maine, I think Maine, Susan Collins is actually in pretty good standing for re-election. The Democrats are trying to run, basically, she voted for Kavanaugh, so she deserves to lose. Well, here's the thing. She voted for Kavanaugh, yes, and that was not a bad decision. That was the right decision. Because you saw that in 2018, electorally, every Democrat in a swing to Republican state that voted against Kavanaugh all lost. Everyone, and even John Tester in Montana and Joe Manchin in West Virginia, they voted for Kavanaugh and they won. So, I think Susan Collins voting for Kavanaugh won't hurt her the way the Democrats think it will. I also think she still keeps that moderate friendship with a lot of Democrats, a lot of Democratic senators, and she keeps in touch with a lot of Democratic voters that a lot of the media and the national media aren't really focusing on. So I think that'll be enough for Susan Collins to win in Maine. Now, we have 2 states left, North Carolina and Arizona, and I mean this. These are going to be the 2 closest ones. These 2 states, I have very mixed feelings about both of them. First, I'll start with Arizona because I actually feel like I kind of have a better idea about Arizona. So Martha McSally is the nominee for Republicans again. She ran against Kyrsten Sinema back in 2018. She narrowly lost by about under 2 points. And here's the thing. Martha McSally has a very good resume for running for politics. She was in the military, the first female to fly a combat mission. I think it was either Afghanistan or Iraq. I'm not too sure. But she was the first female to fly a combat mission in the U.S. military and the U.S. Air Force. She has a great resume, but for some reason the people in Arizona just don't like her too much, and it's partly because she kind of plays like a moderate and she kind of plays like a Trump supporter at the same time. She's trying to play both sides of the field, and a lot of people in Arizona kind of see her as kind of phony in that way. She's not really picking a side, and that's certainly not helping her. And plus, she ran against Kyrsten Sinema last time, who's a lot more of a moderate Democrat. And she's running against Mark Kelly, who's kind of a moderate Democrat as well. He's a little more liberal than Sinema is, but he's still pretty much a moderate, except on issues like gun rights. But everything else is a moderate. So, Martha McSally, she's like a meh candidate at best for the state of Arizona based on how the people see her. And she's had the trouble of running against 2 good Democrats both times. Right now, I'd put Arizona narrowly in the Democrat column. I just can't really see Martha McSally winning if she doesn't start improving in the polls and fundraising. because a lot of polls that have come out already have showed her in a very trailing early on, and that happened with her versus Cinema as well. And I kind of wrote it off last time. I thought she would still end up winning. She almost did, but Cinema ended up winning, and I feel like I'm kind of learning from my mistakes in this one. So I think Mark Kelly will end up winning in Arizona narrowly, and Martha McSally will come up a little bit short. Now, the state of North Carolina, Tom Tillis, the Republican, is running for re-election again. He won in 2014. I believe it was a plurality of the vote. I think he got around 49%. The Democrat senator at the time, Kay Hagan, got 47%. Then a Libertarian got, what's that? I think 4%, 5%, something like that. I think what the margins were. Either way, I don't know if there's going to be a third-party candidate split the vote this time. But Tom Tillis, it's weird. He's kind of liked and disliked. He's liked by moderates, disliked by some Trump supporters, but also liked by Trump supporters. And he's a conservative challenger in the primary. Garland Tucker just dropped out, who's more pro-Trump. And President Trump endorsed Tom Tillis. So Tom Tillis has the president's support, which I think is going to be very big in this race. And I think it could end up being enough to give Tom Tillis this race. Because I think without President Trump's endorsement, Tom Tillis will kind of be like a Dean Heller scenario where maybe it's too little too late. He's trying to play as a moderate and a Trump supporter, and then he'll pick a side and just totally blow it. For now, we're not sure, but I would give Tom Tillis North Carolina for now. So right now, that is my Senate prediction for the 2020 election in December of 2019. About 11 months out, I think Republicans will hold the majority with 52 seats. The Democrats will have 48 seats, gaining 1. The Democrats will flip the seats of Arizona and Colorado, while Republicans will flip in Alabama. So thank you so much for watching the video. Please like and subscribe for more content. Tap the bell icon. I really appreciate it. I'm trying to grow my channel every day, so I'd really appreciate if you could subscribe and be a part of that. Thank you so much for watching again, and I'll see you in the next video.